ask you to have some questions about.
Your Honor, we would object as to the fact that we made for this witness to testify to any of this material.
So I'm showing you what is titled Memories 2018 October 9th, 4:58 UTC, Melly, Montana. Can you see that picture there on your screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Who is the female over there?
That's my daughter.
And which daughter is that?
My wife.
Okay. Who else is in that photograph with her?
That's your man.
I'm going to go here to this image. This is 2018, November 11th, 23:53:26 UTC. Again, Melly, Montana. Who is pictured in this photograph?
My daughter, my wife.
Do you recognize the individual in the back?
No.
Prior to coming into court yesterday, were you shown two photographs of the alleged victims in the case?
Yes, I was.
Were you able to identify them?
No, I was not.
In terms of your relationship with Anthony Williams and Chris Thomas, how many times have you met them?
Maybe twice. Scott maybe twice. Judy maybe once.
And do you know them by their real names?
No, I don't.
How did you refer to them?
Scott and Judy.
So I want to go forward to some of the videos in this particular exhibit, specifically Memories 2018, October 18th, 2:17:49 UTC. Start with this one. I'm going to
from our relationship, it is the most important shit here.
So the image that is shown there, do you recognize the person in that driver's license?
It's buried.
Okay. I'm going to show you another video, the next one
The most
here.
important shit here. Like, get right there, man. You know you come back.
Whose driver's license is that?
That's my daughter.
The conversations and things that on there, do you recognize the voice?
I didn't really listen. I mean, you have to say it again.
From our relationship, it is the most important shit here.
Do you recognize the person who's speaking in that video?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
That's your man.
So I want to go back to October 26th of 2018. Where were you living?
I was with my husband.
And my geography is terrible, okay? How far away is Cocoa from Barry County?
About 3-4 hours.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a registered nurse.
Were you a registered nurse at that time as well?
Yes, I was.
Did you know the defendant's mother?
Yes, I did.
And who is she?
Jim.
Have you met her prior to October 26th of 2018?
Yes, I did.
Have you communicated with her?
Yes, I did.
Did you have a phone number for her?
I'm pretty sure I probably did.
I'm not asking you to.
I don't know if I did or not. I can't remember.
Okay. So I want to go forward on October 26th of 2018 and talk about that early morning hours. Did you receive or hear a phone call, a FaceTime video call, when the defendant was in prison?
I did overhear. I'm not quite sure exactly the context of the call, but I did overhear the phone call.
Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what woke you up that morning?
Just hearing my daughter's voice.
Okay. What was the tone of her voice without saying what she said?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Do you remember anything the defendant said on that video?
Not really, but I don't.
Did you have an opportunity to read the statement you gave in 2018?
I read the statement.
Okay. Was it
I don't recall. I don't remember anything from my statement, but I do remember my deposition from December 22.
So the deposition that would have been 6 months ago?
Yes.
Okay. I want to go and when you spoke, remember speaking with law enforcement in December of 2018?
I remember speaking with them, but I don't remember what they looked like. I don't remember the names, but I do remember talking to someone.
Okay. So, Ms. Holmes, I want to ask you, were you honest and truthful with law enforcement when you spoke with them?
I would hope so. I mean, it was 2018, and I went through a lot in that year, so I'm not sure where my mindset was at that time.
Did you lie to law enforcement?
I would hope not. I don't remember what I said at that. It was like 5 years ago.
Oh, of course, of course. I understand it's been a long time. So in terms of the time frame, that was closer in time to the incident of October 26th of 2018?
If that's what everybody was saying it is.
You don't even remember.
I don't remember. So 2018 was a very hard year for me. My husband just went to prison. My father died. I had a lot going on, so I was really out of it.
Okay. And in terms of your conversations with the police officers that morning,
Yes. I do remember that they kind of bullied me and threatened my daughter and took her to jail for accessory after that. I do remember that.
yes. And in terms of the statements that you made about what happened, you don't have any recollection of that. Did you read this statement multiple times?
I looked at it and I just didn't recall it, and
And so you indicated you hoped you were truthful with law enforcement.
yes, I did.
I have to ask you to be more definitive. Were you truthful?
I don't remember what I said to them back then, so if I was to tell you something now, I could be lying. I don't want to lie on the stand because you want you to get jail. So I'm saying what you want me to say.
I do not want you to say anything. I want you to tell the truth.
Okay, that's what I'm doing.
So, Ms. Holmes, with regards to that day, did you lie to law enforcement?
I just
Objection,
answered that
ask the
earlier.
answer.
Excuse me, hold on. Repeat the question.
I don't remember.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
One person can talk at a time and those who objection.
Okay.
All right, you ask your question again.
Okay. So, Ms. Holmes, did you lie to law enforcement?
Not that I recall. I don't remember.
Okay. Going forward to the events of that day.
Yes.
I want to take a moment and say, rest in peace to Juan W. Jr. and Juan W. Sanchez. For whatever reason, his brothers lost their life. It wasn't worth it. May they rest in peace, and may their family find whatever closure they may find. It's such a tragic situation. And may the brother be found not guilty. Hopefully, he did not do that to the best friend.
You heard that phone call. Where were you?
Home.
Where was it? Home in Cocoa?
Cocoa.
Who else was there at your house?
My kids.
When you heard the phone call, did you hear what had allegedly happened?
I heard that they're my
That's
finished.
it.
Did you
No,
see
you don't
any pictures or videos of anyone injured at that point?
No, I did not.
Did you see the defendant on the screen of that video call?
I saw his face, yes.
Usually bras fit small-chested women like this. Yeah.
In terms of the method of communication, do you know if it was a FaceTime call?
I assume it was FaceTime. I couldn't say for sure what kind of call.
At the time of
This wicked right
October
here.
of 2008,
Who knows what's
December
what?
of
I'm not here to
2008,
judge.
do you know the defendant's
I'm
phone
here
number?
to understand, what's going on in
Call
our
today
culture.
the defendant's phone number was?
What's happening? Why did this happen?
In terms of
What's going on?
Information that you have.
Too much of this
regarding
is happening.
that phone number, was that saved in your phone at that time?
We're here to try to make some
Yes, I
sense,
am.
man. Trying to
I
find
can't
some sense in
remember.
this.
Do you know what phone number you had?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
So, Ms. Holmes, to go back, and in terms of looking at your statement and being together anything professional recollection as to what the defendant's phone number was and what you had at that time.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. You said you didn't remember the defendant's phone number.
No, I don't.
Would looking at a copy of your statement help refresh your memory as to what?
No, I don't think it will.
Would you like to try to do so?
Yeah, look at it for you.
And so the council on the record in terms of page 3 of 8. And I'm going to ask you to read this part silently to yourself. And we're going to start here. When you're doing that, does that refresh Your Honor, pursuant to 90.8035, the state would move at this time to read into the record the relevant portion.
Objection.
I see, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
We don't, let's call the clock, let's take our lunch and recess, don't discuss the case, don't film any opinion about the case, don't allow anyone to discuss the case from the present. Certainly no research, all right? Keep no take on your chair, sorry for the delay. What's that?
So for those that don't know, who ain't been following the trial of Y&W Melly, he on trial, him and Portland, Y&W Portland on trial for the murder of Y&W Sack Chase and Y&W Jr. Two guys who were murdered on their way from home from the studio. They never made it home. The courts are alleging, the state is alleging that Y&W Melly was in the back seat, and they're alleging that he murdered his two best friends. He shot one and then he shot the other, both in the head, execution style. They're describing how bullets went through windows, and then they're saying how they then drove to another location and staged it to look as if it was a drive-by shooting. So they're saying Y&W Melly and his co-defendant, he has a co-defendant, Y&W Portland, they say got the car and they went around to the other side of the car, the passenger side of the car, and they proceeded to shoot the car up 16 times or so to make it like a drive-by. And then they're alleging that Y&W Melly was let out of the car just a few blocks later, was let out of the car and called for a ride and called this and FaceTime people. That even the state is even alleging that he called Fredro Payne, the famous rapper Fredro Payne, who we all know, and whose music is loved by many. So yeah, you know, this is a trial like no other. In my personal opinion, I believe this trial is just as big as the O.J. Simpson trial. You know, you have two deaths, you have a famous celebrity, you have the mystery of why and how and what was the motive and behind this, and then you have the co-defendant, best friends are best friends with each other, and they're also best friends of the deceased. So what we have here is a trial like no other, only seen back when the O.J. Simpson trial. You know, so I was a child, of course, then, it's all over. You hear me talk about things. Or I mean, it's the most high-profile celebrity case in decades, in my opinion. So, and the guy is facing the death penalty here. So this is not your average just murder trial. This guy is facing the death penalty. Him and his co-defendant. These guys are facing the death penalty. Y&W Melly is facing the death penalty, and his co-defendant is facing life. So these guys are literally here fighting for their life right now. So they have no room for error or lies or deceit of any sort, you know. And this trial is it's deep. It's deep. What's being uncovered and things being said. And right now on the stage, the mom of Y&W Melly's girlfriend. This is her mom, who received a call the night of the murders from Y&W Melly, and the state is alleging that Melly spoke about a drive-by that they're alleging he is claiming he wasn't at, allegedly, according to the state and the evidence and testimony coming out through the trial. So this is a deep trial right here, and just let's see what you guys think concerning this, taking away the fact that this guy's an entertainer, a famous entertainer at that, 10 times platinum. They say the guy done went diamond in selling records since he's been locked up. For those who don't know, diamond means that he sold 10 million plus albums, which means a lot of money has been generated from this guy since being locked up. So, You know, this is not your Joe Schmo average, run of the mill guy just, being charged with murder here. This is a
I've been obsessed with belts for a long time. I wear a
profile,
belt every day. And it was like 3 things
multi-millionaire,
that always drove me crazy
celebrity
about belts.
rapper being charged and accused of a double homicide of his two best friends.
I understand.
This
But
is
I
not,
go to December 22nd.
your average murder trial. This guy killed that guy because this guy didn't like that guy. No, you have two dead bodies here that YNW Portland drove to the hospital.
Coming into that deposition.
He drove the bodies to the hospital, shows up to the hospital with two deceased guys in this vehicle.
So, and that's so
And
clear.
allegedly, according to the state and testimony coming out of the trial, said that it was in the driveway. And the state saying that they have evidence that this was no drive. This was no drive. This was a murder that took place somewhere other than the place where YNW Portland said the drive-by took place. The state is alleging they found evidence in shell cases elsewhere. The state is also alleged to have found a shell casing in the actual vehicle that the two deceased were in. Now, how the defense can get around that, we're going to wait and see. Because this is a trial like no other, like I said. These guys are literally fighting for their life. And if they lose, they're done. If they lose, they're done. If YNW Metal and YNW Portland lose this trial, they are done. They're giving the guy the death penalty. That means he's going to have to appeal this for the next 20, 30 plus years to avoid that need. And forgive my vulgarity and forgive me if that was offensive. And I'm not hoping nothing on anybody. I'm not here to judge, and I'm not a part of this in any way other than a journalistic point of view, which is what I'm giving. And yeah, that's it. That's it. I have no horse in this race. Personally, to have any type of bias or swayed opinion or whether it is or that, I'm not here for that. That's not my discussion at all. My discussion is the discussion.
So
my discussion is the discussion. The entirety of this case. That is the discussion. Seen it from both sides, defense and prosecution, victims and the accused. We're here to talk about the entirety of this case and what it means for everybody involved. This is serious stuff. This is serious stuff.
Question is the statement. What's your question?
Is this December 2018 statement correct and honest?
I don't remember the December 2018 statement.
In December of 2022,
Yes,
did you state that it was an honest and correct statement?
that's what she put in the deposition. I don't remember saying it, so I can't remember verbatim. I remember some parts of this deposition, but not all.
Okay, is there anything that you need to refresh your recollection to determine whether or not I'm being truthful and accurate as to what the question was in your answer?
I don't know to say that.
Okay.
Is that a question?
And ask if there's anything that
Please,
was
one at a time. Just one, let them finish your answer before you ask the next question.
so, Ms. Holmes, is there anything that would help refresh your recollection?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Would the audio of the statement of December 2018 help?
Objection.
What's the objection?
It's irrelevant. She testified 3 times.
Excuse me. Thank you. Now ask this. Go ahead. Overrule.
I don't.
So, Ms. Holmes, with regards to the events of October 26th, 2018,
Yes, ma'am.
did you travel down here to Dartmouth?
Yes, I did.
Who did you go with?
My daughter and my wife.
Okay, where did you go?
We went to one of Janelle's friend's house.
And whose house was that?
Frida.
And now approach it has been previously shown to the defense counsel and marked as stage N for identification purposes only. Ms. Holmes, do you recognize the two individuals in that photograph?
Yes, I did.
How do you recognize them?
I know Frida from being on Instagram from Athens and after.
Okay. Any other individual that
My
phone number?
daughter's left.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear,
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear your answer. Could you
Which
repeat?
one? Do I recognize?
Thank you.
I do recognize, Frito from Amsterdam for being a rapper, and I recognize Janelle who did my work.
Here, at this time, the state requesting the state N, is the next number to get it.
Any objection?
Relevant.
Over, repeat.
Space triple N, do not say 62.
This is the photo that you can see on your screen that you just identified? Okay. So when you said Frito, is this the individual's house you went to?
Yeah.
Oh. Ms. Holmes, how much money has the defendant's manager given you since the October of 2018?
Objection. Relevance.
Motion second.
How much money have you gotten from the defendant, and manager? And with regard to that specific statement, Ms. Holmes, you have a credit union account? And at launch credit union, you transfer from many years. The credit union that you've been at, and your account, and I won't put your account number in the record.
You're not objecting, it's not reflecting the basis of the meeting. Objection, I think.
So the testimony is that you have never been given money, that's right.
I've never been given money for personal use.
Okay. So the question is, how much money have you been given by the defendant?
For vacation for all, I have his wife and me to pay for as far as, he gave me $5,000 for Airbnb, which I gave him $1,000 to deposit that,
So he did give you money?
not for personal use.
Okay.
Excuse me, can we clarify who he is, Jameson Francois?
Objection, just clarify, counsel.
So it's clear, who is Jameson Francois?
He's trapped, he's not his manager.
And you're saying his wife as well, who's his wife?
I just go by AA,
So AA and his wife.
we're all good friends.
So I'm going to go now to previously shown to defense counsel and mark the state triple M. It's a composite of 17 pages. Did you have an opportunity to review that prior to coming into court today?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And in terms of the individuals and the phone numbers that are on that, do you recognize your own phone number?
No, I did not.
Going forward to the contents of that particular item, do you recognize the conversation about a snake?
No, I did not. I know they had a sleep, I don't recognize this conversation.
Okay, with regards to the conversation about the snake, do you remember, what do you remember about the snake?
That they had a sleep.
What happened to it?
Objection. Relevance.
Sustained.
Aaron, maybe your first time?
Sure.
So Ms. Holmes, I want to ask you a question as to what was your daughter's phone number back in October of 2018?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Is there anything that was
So
requested?
this is YNW Melly manager, Honey K, double A, right track, 100K track.
In terms of, did you review your
They're
statement?
alleging that he gave her some money or whatever reason. I
December
don't know why they, they said he gave her
December
money or whatever reason. They
14th,
said that was about, but they said he was
December 12th of 2018. Did you review that statement prior to testifying today?
Yes, I did.
And in that statement, were you asked, what is your daughter's phone number?
Objection.
Overruled.
I don't remember.
If I were to show you the statement, would that help refresh your recollection as to whether or not you were asked that question?
I don't think so. But you can show it.
Your permission to approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Three events. to read silently to yourself? Okay, looking at that, does that refresh your recollection to what your daughter's phone number was?
I still don't recognize the number. It doesn't for me. I don't know if it has her number. I don't recognize the number.
Okay, so you don't recognize the number?
I got 3 daughters, so I don't know.
Understood on that one. So, permission to treat the witness if possible?
What's your sidebar, please? Leave it on the jury, and all witnesses home for me to understand. Apologize for the delay, ask me ready to proceed,
Yes, Senator.
please.
Okay, Ms. Holmes, when we left off, we were talking about a pet snake.
Yes.
Do you remember there being a pet snake?
I remember you talking to me about it yesterday.
Okay. And with regards to that snake, you recall it unfortunately passed away.
I'm pretty sure probably, I'm not sure it's not here, I'm pretty sure.
Do you remember the name of that pet snake?
No, I don't.
And in terms of the owners of that snake, do you remember who owned it?
I just know it was, I know who the owner was, it was in the house with Mariah.
Where did Mariah live at that time?
She lived in Myanmar.
And do you know the address?
No, I don't.
Who did she live with?
She lived with my boyfriend, but you know.
That you don't remember your phone number in
Sorry,
2008?
I do not remember my phone number. I don't remember.
And are you telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you don't remember your daughter's phone number?
No, I do not remember his phone number.
And there's nothing that would refresh your memory or recollection whatsoever?
Objection,
That's
ask
4 years
and
ago.
answer.
That was 4 years ago. I've had so much trauma in my life since then.
Okay. So, is it fair to say that you were worried about...
Tell him if he don't get to this live in 3.5 seconds.
Was I worried about him? Yes, I was.
You were worried about him because he had just been involved in a drug fight?
No, because they said his friends were getting shot.
And you were worried about him because he was hiding in some bushes?
Objection.
I don't remember him being suspicious.
What do you remember?
I sustain the objection.
What do you remember?
I should remember him saying for us to come get him.
When you made
I
contact
believe
with
that's her
him
mom on that's on the
late
stand
that
right
same
now.
day through your house?
So yeah, I believe that's her mom. They kinda look alike though, so yeah, I think that's her mom that's on the stand right now since they look so much alike, right?
And is it fair to
The one on the
say
stand just a little darker than this girl right here on IG, but that might be a filter or something in that face. She like, yeah, they look alike. That's definitely her.
Did you
That's
go to
her.
that video shoot?
So that's the girlfriend of YNW Melly, whose mom is on the stand right now. And they're alleging that he sent her text messages and, you know, pick me up and, you know, my guy just was murdered and this and that. And, you know.
Yeah, she did.
Doing that, under the name of it?
Yes, she did.
Have you made other statements about the events of October 26th of 2018?
I don't remember making any other statements.
You recall a Instagram conversation with the co-defendant Courtney Henry?
I don't remember it.
That's kind of approach. See if this refreshes your recollection as to that conversation. Let's see, pages.
Except for Mark Council.
Not yet, no.
I don't remember it. I don't remember it.
You don't have any recollection of that?
I don't remember it.
Is that your Instagram, Lane Queen 258?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and the conversation that you don't recall on that whatsoever?
Yeah, I don't remember it.
Is your testimony here today that you lied in those statements?
Did I lie in my statements?
The allegations that you made to Mr. Henry?
I don't remember making those allegations, so I
Do you remember sending screenshots of those allegations to a detective?
I remember sending a detective something stating that I didn't threaten the boyfriend.
No.
That's I remember that.
You remember sending screenshots of conversations?
I remember telling him that I did, because he reached out to me, asking me if I threatened to kill the boyfriend. And I said, no, I did not threaten the boyfriend. I remember that.
Was there any threats made to you by the defendant?
No.
In terms of your daughter, Mariah, where is she?
I don't know.
After this incident, did she live with the family of the defendant?
She's always lived down there. Before this incident, she always lived there.
And your testimony to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury here today that you saw Penelope in October 26, 2018.
I saw him.
That you spoke with him and heard him on the FaceTime conversation.
I did speak with him.
And it's your testimony that he indicated that it was some sort of shooting that occurred.
Yes, I think, yes.
Okay, and it's your testimony that you saw him on that, your daughter's cell phone, as a video call.
I saw him.
Is it your testimony today that after that, you called Jane King?
Yes, I did call Jane.
And in terms of the conversation with Jane King, that occurred immediately after the FaceTime?
Not probably immediately, but sometime after. I'm not quite sure the time. I don't remember what time it was.
Okay. And it's your testimony to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury today that you were dishonest in your first statement?
I don't remember my first statement.
Okay. Is it your testimony to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you would
I don't
lie?
remember my first statement. I have no reason to lie to you.
Yes or no? Did you lie to police?
I did not lie to you. No.
Yes or no? Did you lie to police?
I didn't lie to you. I don't remember my first statement. You're trying to make me say I remember my first statement. I didn't. For me to say no, I didn't lie with me. I remember my first statement. I don't remember it, so I don't remember.
Well, if you need more time to look it over, I have a copy of the transcript.
I looked it over and I still don't remember it.
Well,
I had to look it over 100 times. I don't remember.
well, if you'd be so kind as to do it one more time.
Yeah, sure.
You can say that to this jury that this is not truthful.
Objection asked and answered 5 times.
Thank you, good to know. Overruled.
I honest to God do not remember any of this right here. Like, I don't remember talking. I don't remember. I had a hard time that year, so it's a lot that I don't remember about that year.
Is it your common practice to lie to law enforcement?
Objection.
Excuse me, that's
I'm
the
very
side
good
of
at law
the
enforcement.
quiet, please.
You're saying it's a lie?
Stay.
I don't.
Excuse me, I said stay in objection.
Okay, so going back to the relationship with your daughter and the defendant. Yes. How long did that last?
3 years. I'm not quite sure how long.
During the course of that relationship, did she have multiple photographs of him?
I'm pretty sure she did.
Videos?
I'm pretty sure she did.
After this incident, October 26, 2018, through this house, is it your testimony that your daughter went upstairs with Mr. Jones?
She did. They did that.
And do you know about what time you got to Downtown?
I think it got about maybe I can't remember the time. Maybe I don't know. But 1 o'clock was after lunch. We went to lunch right after. So it was after lunch.
Do you remember when you went?
Yes.
Do you remember where you went?
I don't remember which restaurant.
Do you remember who you went with?
My daughter and David.
Max James and Paul.
Yes.
And do you remember your testimony to the jury that you remember the defendant, how he was dressed without blood on his clothing?
I don't remember what he had exactly what he had on, but I just remember there was no blood because I was being freaking out. So I remember he had the blood.
No blood on him. Is it your testimony to the jury in terms of that you went to Frito Bang or Frederick Gibbons' house?
Yes.
Is it your testimony to the jury that there were other individuals present at that house?
Yes.
Who is it?
I don't know.
Do you recognize any of the individuals?
No, I don't.
Your daughter, she was present?
Yes,
And in terms of your appearance here today,
yes.
you don't want to be here.
You don't want to do it. You made me come here.
I did.
Yes, you did.
And in terms of you were served with a subpoena and
Never
prior,
served me.
and so you were ordered by the court to show up.
You never served me originally. That was a lie.
And in terms of your job,
Yes.
did you quit your job?
I got fired because you put me in jail.
And prior to that,
Yes.
before you were put in jail, did you quit your job?
No.
Okay. So you never quit your job.
I had to leave because you told my lawyer to put a warrant out for me. So I had to leave my job.
Okay. So you left your job.
Yes.
Did the defendant ever offer to pay for you and your daughter?
No, I did my own way.
Have you ever made statements contrary to that?
I don't remember.
If I may approach you?
No objection.
Mr. Short, counsel. Any questions? Sure.
Okay. Ms. Holmes, were you ever told the defense, or the defendant, rather, would take care of you and pay for your bills? Have you ever made a statement that is different than that?
Oh, yes, yes.
If I may approach her?
Sure.
Okay. So, Ms. Holmes, is it your statement testimony that you never stated the promises that were made to us by YNW for me to quit my job and they would take care of us for all lives? They didn't want us talking with prosecutors, but now they've all disappeared. You never said that before.
I don't even say anything.
Objection, Your Honor. Move for mistrial.
Thank you. Mr. Sidewell.
Ms. Holmes, did you ever say the defendant made you
This
quit your
serious
job?
right here.
I
This
don't
serious
say
right here.
I don't say anything
Wow.
for my job.
Objection.
Wow, this serious. Yo, this serious. You hear that? Did you just hear that? Wow. Wow. Wow.
So I'm going to ask you again, have you ever made a statement that the defendant made you quit your job and that they would take care of us until the trial was over?
I didn't say anything like that.
They got
So you're
her
denying
writing
making that
on her IG and messages and all of that. This is crazy.
Objection.
This is a deep trial, I'm telling you. This
Your
is
Honor, can I
deep
just
work.
have a standing objection so we don't keep interrupting?
Thank you. Any stated through her understanding objection?
Whatever defense is.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Ms. Holmes, in terms of the,
And
have you
for
ever
those that
said
don't
a
understand,
statement-
they lightweight just
You're
caught
gonna
this
say
woman in the
that,
lie on the stand.
you were
saying
told to
something
quit your
other than
job
what she wrote
and the defense
out
would
to somebody,
take
what
care
she
of
said
us.
to somebody.
Objection.
She was ranting and mad because they hadn't gave her no money allegedly. And she was saying how they didn't want me to talk to the prosecutors,
Why
they didn't
have
want
over
me to
2
tell the
million
truth,
sleepers
and they ain't
still
gave me
in
no
Casper?
money. They better give me
Because
some
we think
money or
that-
I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the prosecutor the truth. Now she's saying that she's in the court saying something different other than the truth. Allegedly.
The last question, I made a determination that was an inappropriate, improper question, and the way it was phrased was totally improper, and therefore I sustained the objection. I am instructing you that you will disregard the question, all right? I'm going to ask counsel to rephrase the question. Go ahead.
So it's clear. Ms. Holmes, did the defendant ever make you a promise to quit your job and that they had us?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Thank you. Overruled. Proceed.
I don't remember saying anything like that.
So your testimony that you never said that.
I don't remember.
Excuse me, counsel, she answered the question, all right? Let's move on.
So with regard
Counsel like
to
objection.
your
You
statement
can't answer that.
with Portland Henry,
And he trying to get his client off for two bodies. What he supposed to do?
do you remember speaking and talking about your daughter with Portland Henry?
No, I don't. When was that? Yes, I don't know. Sure.
When was that?
This right here, this ain't no joke. This ain't no joke. I'm telling you, this man is fighting for his life. Him and his
Did you
man.
talk to Portland Henry about your daughter's involvement in this case?
Wow.
I can recall.
Ms. Holmes,
They say Lang involved as far as YNW Melly calling him to come pick him up. And
material.
they imagine YNW Melly was telling people that he was just in the drive-by, but he was saying he wasn't there. You know, this is serious. It's serious right here, you know. So,
Was there a
we gotta
conversation?
tune in and we gotta, you know, keep our ears glued and catch every little detail, evidence, alleged evidence, and, you know, 'cause somebody's gonna try to fight for their life, and that's not no laughing matter. That's not nothing to take lightly. That's not nothing to joke about. You know, people are dead and people are on trial. So, yeah, this is serious stuff.
Only my concern is I asked you, did your daughter tell you, did you have a conversation with your daughter about what happened on October 26th of 2019?
Yes, I actually was sure about
Did she tell you what happened without? No, she did
that.
not.
She didn't.
Have you ever made a statement that is different than that?
Now, we'd object to lack of foundation, calls for hearsay, speculation, unless they can establish that that witness was present.
Thank you. Objection noted. That's why I previously moved on sidebar. Proceed. To your approach.
Showing you your messages on Instagram from February 5th, 2021.
Was that Instagram? Is that the one? This one you sent to Portland?
Ma'am,
I don't
sorry.
remember. I don't remember that.
They pulling out the IG
I
messages.
looked at it. I'm sure it's-
Yes, sir. They pulling out the IG messages.
So it's like the times
You know, you would be thinking niggas just talking IG messages regularly,
One at a time.
and it's the man. All everything you do on the internet is saved, y'all. Everything you type on your phone, everything you do, everywhere you drive, there's a record of everything.
So,
Everything is recorded right now,
you
yo.
said that
So come on, y'all gotta be a little bit smarter with whatever it is y'all doing, you know. And I'm not saying anybody's guilty of anything that's alleged with this case. I'm just hearing the evidence and just looking at in ways that evidence would have been avoided, and there'd be no evidence had people not left an electronic trail of the alleged incident, you know.
that
So,
you
yeah.
remember.
Like I said, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just, you know, commentating on a national news story that's out there that's being covered everywhere. So, yeah, you know, I'm just, you know, here to bring a different view, different perspective on it, and you know, the
Have you
truth,
ever,
man. You know, let's keep it real here on what we see, you know, and what we hear, you know. So, yeah. So far through the case, through the state, in my opinion, have enough to convict this man of double homicide. In my honest opinion, and I'm no lawyer, and anything I say should not be taken as legal advice by anybody out there. In my opinion, no. In my opinion, no. The state doesn't have enough to convict him on double murder merely off of circumstantial evidence. They haven't produced a murder weapon. They haven't produced a motive. I mean, there's reasons why, in my opinion. At this point in the trial, you know, he's not. I don't see them convicting them off of the evidence they're showing. What they're doing right now, they are showing a lot of circumstantial evidence, But none of that
Ms.
circumstantial
Holmes,
evidence
did
is
you ever
needed to a
make
motive
any
at all.
statements specific to what was happening in the car on October 26th of 2018 prior to the homicide?
Objection.
Thank you. I still want to come on side with this.
So, Ms. Holmes, I want to ask, were you present when your daughter spoke with law enforcement?
She was 17 when I had been present.
Do you recall about when that happened?
If she was 17, that had to happen in 2018.
Okay. Without getting into what she said on that. Do you remember where that statement was taken?
No.
When you came down to Fort Lauderdale, was your daughter concerned for Mr. Dennis?
Objection. Calls for conclusion on part of this witness.
Based on your daughter's demeanor, how was she acting?
Sustained.
When you arrived in Fort Lauderdale and saw Mr. Dennis, did you ask him what happened?
Objection. Asked and answered.
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
When you arrived in Fort Lauderdale, did you ask Mr. Dennis what had happened?
No, I did not.
Nothing further.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
You came here and one of your first, let me get it.
Objection, Your Honor, improper.
I haven't asked you.
Excuse me, counsel, you direct your comments to.
I'm sorry, I haven't asked anything yet.
Ask your question.
When you first took the stand, you said, I feel threatened.
Yes, sir, I do.
Who do you feel threatened by?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Christine Bradley, the prosecutor's office.
This prosecutor.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Anything else in this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
you said you feel threatened by me.
Of course.
Okay. Did you fail to appear for numerous court appearances?
No, I never served in live,
Okay.
live to the court.
And with regards to, did you work in Redding, California?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Material.
And so that was a location you were at?
That's why I was chaplain or something. Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the prosecution, you have been served on various occasions to testify.
You served me a subpoena on November to be the next week, and I was in California, 10 hours away. It wasn't even served correctly.
And prior to that, you were served with a subpoena in
Never
February of 2019.
Never served me. I went served to a location I didn't live at anymore.
Do you recall coming to the courthouse in February of 2019?
Objection beyond the scope.
Excuse me.
Anything about the courthouse in
Excuse me, come sideways.
You even went so far as to hire an attorney
Yes,
to
I
try
did.
not to show up.
I sure did.
And has the state offered you any money?
The state basically has me on a monitor. I have to go to my job with this. It's embarrassing. People think I'm a criminal. The state has known my life.
And in terms of your feelings and ill will towards the state and myself,
I just feel like you lock up innocent people.
and does that influence your testimony today?
It's not influencing my testimony.
Have
No,
you-
I'm telling
have you-
you,
that's not-
I'm
Actually, Your Honor,
Excuse me, hold on. Only one of you can talk at a time. You ask the question, counsel, you answer it, and when you let her finish her question, and then when she starts answering the question, you let the witness answer her question, all right?
Yes, sir. So the my question was non-responsive on that one.
Ask your question.
So, Ms. Holmes, in terms of the court order that was issued, you're aware that that was found to be valid?
no, I'm not aware of that at all.
Okay. You hired an attorney to go and represent you before District Court of Appeals?
He had to hire an attorney to try to get him this far.
And that's a whole statement.
Objection.
That.
Excuse me, counsel, you're not testifying.
I agree on
You
that.
Excuse me, you asked the question, all right? That's it, you asked the question.
And so, Ms. Holmes, with regards to that, you hired an attorney,
Yes.
and you then tried to get any sort of court order requiring you to be here in court right now.
No, what I did was I hired an attorney because he was saying he served me a subpoena that you never served.
And that was found to be valid.
You never served me a subpoena. You never served me. I've never seen a subpoena from you whose address that you said you served. Those are not my addresses.
Your testimony is that you have never been served to appear in court.
Sustain. Excuse me, sustain.
And so, with regards to your feeling threatened on that, have I ever, any sort of physical violence against you? Do you have any written threats from me?
He intimidated me this whole time.
And in terms of your participation in this case, you understand that you were served a subpoena to appear here today?
You served a subpoena after arresting me.
And
You served a subpoena at the jail.
And you understand you're here pursuant to that order? And that requires, under the law, to comply with court orders to compel attendance of witnesses.
I've been complying.
Nothing further than
Anything further?
No, sir.
Thank you. Is witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. You're excused.
So as y'all see and hear for yourself, this trial is a trial like no other. It's a trial like no other. Remember, you got two men fighting for their lives right now. Understand, fighting for their lives right now. The court's fighting for their lives right now. So it's a very serious trial, and they'll be resuming Tuesday to finish their arguments on both sides, and not conclude it for the argument, continue the trial. It'll be continuing Tuesday. So. Here and there, we'll be back with I'll be back with more updates on it as it's updated and more content on it, as I come across it myself. And let's talk about it, let's speak on it, you know what I'm saying? And what would you do in this situation? What would you have done and not done in this situation? Can anybody think of a motive? What was the reason? Why is these guys dead? What's the reason? This is crazy. The dad here said he got a reason possibly for the motive.
Melly is saying that he is innocent. His defense attorneys are saying the state can't prove its case. But it's my understanding you believed from the very beginning that Melly was responsible for your son's death and the death of Anthony.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son's death on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation, when I finally talked to him in Portland on the FaceTime, their response and how they were reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was in my opinion, they were in the best spirits. They never came to town, never came to my son's funeral, never came to Sack's funeral. And these are best friends. He passed straight through the county of Indian River, went to the bar and did a music video, but he couldn't even stop and pay his condolences to his best friend's mom. He even got Jana tatted on his neck. That's why his defense attorney got him wearing turtlenecks and shirt to hide his neck, because he got Jana tatted on his neck. That's Sack mom. Man. He got Chris' name and Sack name. This guy.
Now let's pause there for a minute there. They're saying he got the deceased people mom name tatted on him. That's deep. This deep, man. You know what I mean? Like, even to be accused of murdering that guy, the guy you that close to, and where you that close to a guy where you would tattoo his mom name on you, that's your brother. That's your brother. That's your man's in there. You know what I mean? You would take a bullet for truth, you know what I mean? You got his mom's name tatted on you. Come on, dog. And they accuse you of murdering him. That's deep. That's deep. So this Juby's dad, YNW Juby's dad, saying why he believes his son is gone, why he believes his son is dead, by the hands of his bro, his homie, his man, his brother. You know.
The guy is just, I have no words for that guy.
What was it in particular that was said on that FaceTime that made you think that Melly was responsible?
Nothing was said, actually, like the demeanor, really like the body language, really. Like I was just reading them, and as I'm telling them and asking them questions, I got so emotional, I started crying. They wasn't reacting to, they acted like they didn't have to take the loss at all. That's how I took it. And then when I was talking to them, I still had in the back of my mind, something's not right. Something's not right.
Did they tell you anything about what they claimed happened with the drive-by they claimed happened?
No. They had absolutely no explanation. Like, we had to figure it out just like the police.
Chris, why do you think that this happened? Why do you think, Melly did this? Because, Melly is on trial. The state has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed these crimes. But why do you think this happened?
I think the story about the $200,000 with Anthony was a true story because it's not reported, but Chris told me the same story, and also the $500,000 play, and Melly was going to get $200,000, Zach was going to get $200,000, Chris was going to get $100,000, and as I'm hearing it from Chris, they was going to sell the YNW brand, not a record deal or nothing like that. It was like for the brand itself. By them being founding members, they was going to get a piece of the pie. So I don't think Melly did it on his own. I think that manager guy got in his ear and did a little divide and conquer. Because if it was up to Sack, it would never be a 100K management.
They were going to sell the YNW name for licensing or to sell products? Or what do you mean they were going to sell the name?
For marketing, licensing, stuff like that.
And to clarify what the dad mean by they were going to sell the name in their dealings with the record label, the verbiage in the contract says your name and likeness, we own your name and likeness and things like that. So it's doing a deal based off of a name and likeness deal, like the NIL deal that college students are able to sign. It's basically, not only are we giving you money for, let's say, a piece of your publisher, or we giving you money for your masters, to own a piece of your masters, or all of your masters, but we're also giving you money to own your name and likeness, and to own your name, your brand. We want to own your brand, so we can push it, so we can market it, so we can also make money off of it. Just in case, this $500,000 I'm giving you, if I don't make my money back, one way, I have different avenues to make it back. And I'm speaking for if I was the label doing that deal, and why I would be wanting a piece of the likeness and image for marketing purposes.
That made them want to go up on the bigger umbrella just to push them, I think. Push the brand more global. That's what I'm thinking.
And so you think that Melly wanted a bigger cut of that then?
I think Melly didn't want to give them guys nothing. He wanted to be the only one to shine. Then they came to town next day and gave the mothers $15,000, the other 10,000. So I thought to myself, if Zach was going to get 200,000, Chris would get 100,000. We could pay these people 25,000, keep 275,000. That's how I saw it. It just nothing added up. Melly still to this day for me to hear him call them boys his best friend is an insult. That was an insult.
Was there any sign of bad blood before your son's life was taken?
Okay, let's pause it there for a moment. Now, we all just heard that as clear as day. His reasoning behind what he believes is the motive. He said it's money. The record deal money at that. They all hustled up and, went in the studio together and struggled through the years and came up with these records together. Now that the money come, they're saying that Melly switched up. He turned to a whole other person. Now that we done got the deal, we about to get the money. Now we can go get the whips and we can get the crib and depending on the breakdown of the royalties, which is something. We're gonna get money on the back end and we could go do shows and we're rich. We basically rich now. And they said at that moment, that's when Melly snapped.
And before Anthony was killed, or was there any tension there that you knew of?
Not with Juvie, not with Chris, but you heard things about him and Anthony getting into like altercations about disputes about money over certain situations, and they got in a fight prior to that. And they said like another story that they say Sack beat him up and knocked his goals out in front of his girlfriend, and like 2 days later, I think that's when the incident happened.
Chris, I know that something that has to be really hard about this is the fact that there are relatives here, relatives of Cortland Henry, who are also relatives of the victims.
Yes. Chris and Cortland share a sister, and she's my daughter. Her and Chris had the same dad, which is me, and her and Cortland share the same mom. And she took the side of Melly. She still to this day screams Free Melly all on her Facebook, Instagram. She'll go live with Free Melly shirts, and they just got her brainwashed with the money. They just showering her with gifts in Portland and got my daughter just brainwashed to the fact that she wishing the killer of her brother was free. I just don't understand it. That's a heartbreaking feeling, man. For me to see that day that her saying that, that's just heartbreaking.
Do you talk to your daughter about this?
We haven't talked. She was living with me up until the time shortly after the funerals, and then we went our separate ways. I haven't talked to her in over 2 years.
So it sounds like you've lost 2 children.
They're the 2 that look like me the most. It's crazy.
Are you hoping that this trial, maybe at the end, things can change with your daughter?
Yeah, once she see the truth and the boys get convicted, I'm hoping that her whole demeanor change. But knowing them, they're gonna be like, wait till the appeal. He's still innocent. Wait till the appeal. Just have to wait and see. It's gonna be a process.
I feel like so often you get into the evidence and really the victims get lost in these trials. Just any final words about your son?
You know, before we get his final words, what do you have to say? Like, put yourself in this man's shoes. He lost his son. And like you said, his son looked just like when they was cool, like his best friend. You know, it's his homie, man. He done lost his son. So to put yourself in this man's shoes is to understand why he's saying what he's saying and feel the way he feels. Now, is it factual? Who knows? You know, is he right? Is he wrong? Who knows? At this point, it's for the courts to decide. Like I said again, I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody. I'm not biased in one way or the other. I'm not standing for the defense. I'm not standing for the prosecution. I'm just here as an open-minded journalist, giving a point of view as any other commentator. So yeah, let's continue. Again, like I said, put yourself in this man's shoes, and then you'll understand why he's saying what he's saying. In his mind, it's a slam dunk case. It's open and shut. This guy did it. He killed my son, and ain't nothing nobody can tell me. And him and their co-defendant, they both guilty, and that's it. And in his mind, throw the book at him. And in his mind, the case is already over.
It's always forever long live Juvie. I miss him and love him to death. You got a lot of Melly fans that be spamming my inbox and all over, even y'all guys chat talking about Free Melly. But one of their loved ones was to get murdered. Imagine the whole world saying free the alleged killer of that guy. It just make you feel some type of way. You just want to crash out yourself because I don't know. First they trying to make it seem like Chris and Sack was extorting Melly, which is a false narrative that his camp painted. That was never true. And Chris never did nothing to nobody. They can't even say nothing he did to Melly. Nothing that they can't show anything that made him want to do anything to Chris. And that's what got me the way I'm feeling because Chris never did anything. And he loved it, that dude. That dude did that to him. I never accept that. And to everybody that's on his side, it's on the opposite side of me.
If he's convicted, would you like him to get the death penalty? Because he's the first person to, have the death penalty as a potential punishment since the law change lowered the threshold for it.
Yes, eye for an eye. Old Testament. He deserved it. Because they showed no remorse. They still trying to badmouth these boys. And when it happened, Melly and Kristen had Instagram pages. He went on his page. They went on his page. Whoever took all the pictures down of Chris and Anthony it made it look like they was never existed. If he's so innocent, they never put up a reward to find the killer. They never did a tribute. They never did anything. They even pushed Chris' funeral back from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. just so Melly could make it, and he still didn't show up. And he never showed up to Sap's funeral. So this your best friend, and you won't even come to the funeral? That just, I don't know, man. That guy deserves everything coming his way. And I have no sympathy for him.
So there you have it. That's coming straight from Y&W Juvie's pops, man. And yeah, he feel how he feel about his son's death, man. And nobody can sway that man's opinion or say he wrong about how he feel about his child. That's his child, man. That's gone. And hey, did Melly do it? Did him and Portland conspire to kill these guys over the 200,000 or the 100,000? Hey, like we say, it's up to the courts at this point to determine guilt or innocence. It's a heavy trial and a heavy burden to bear for all these people involved. And like I said again, man, R.I.P. to Juvie and Y&W Juvie, and R.I.P. to Y&W Citation. And may their family find the closure that they looking for. I can only imagine. I can only imagine to be in their shoes, to be going through this. It's senseless. And then over such a small amount of money at that is even more ridiculous. That's not even worth nothing. That's not close to being worth killing somebody over. Anybody over. So, in my mind, and with this guy went 10 times platinum, do you guys understand the money that you make from music these days? It's a $1 billion industry, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, okay? There's millions of dollars being made every day as we speak. I have music out there myself. You know what I'm saying? My name, I'm FN. You know what I'm saying? My dad said in the beginning of the video. I should have said in the beginning of the video. I'm FN. Stream, I'm FN, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Check me out one time. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's a lot of money being made in the music business every day. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't gonna slow down no time soon. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, And he just went, like I say, he just went 10 times platinum right now. You know what I mean? While he's been locked up, he went 10 times platinum. It's my page. I'm FN. You know what I'm saying? Thank you to the 285 listeners that's been rocking with me right now this month. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Straight, I'm FN. But, yeah, man. We talking about the Y&W Melly trial, man. And, yeah, it's serious. It's serious stuff, man. It's not nothing to be playing with and joked about, so I'm not here to make jokes about it and play around with it and none of that. You know what I'm saying? Serious. Even with me doing that, when showing my music, I was just saying about the music business, I know a thing or two about the music business. I have the credibility to even speak of it. Even though I'm independent, I'm not some uber famous rapper. I will be, and when I am, my business will be in order, and I will be, all my T's will be crossed and my I's will be dotted. So, yeah, I understand the business. So, like I said, with the guy going 10 times platinum while he's locked up, I mean, that's millions of dollars. And to say that he killed two guys over $100,000 is ridiculous. It's almost saying he killed a guy over $10 with the amount of money he just made by being locked up. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. And I pray that that's not why this happened. And I pray the guy's actually innocent and did not kill his friends over peanuts and threw away a mountain of money over a couple of coins, literally. That was car money. That was barely a good house money. Like, what was you gonna do? And I'm not saying the guy's guilty. I'm just going by the alleged evidence. I'm just commenting on that. And even from what the dad just said, what are you going to gain from killing your two best friends with the 200,000? Once the 200,000 is gone, which it will be, then what? Now your homie life was worth what? A chain, a car, that's it. Come on, now. And you was on your way to make $10 million 2 years later? There's $10 million on the table now, and you sitting in prison fighting for your life. So now all this money you could have spent on the cars and the houses and all the change you want in the world, you're giving that money to attorneys. And again, I'm not saying the guy guilty. I'm not saying the guy innocent. I don't know him. I don't have a horse in this race. Again, I'm just coming from a journalistic point of view, and yeah, that's it, you know. And it's ridiculous for these guys that have lost their life over whatever the reason was. I don't know what the reason was, but I pray it wasn't over a measly $200,000. You know, that's not there's no nothing you can. There's nobody you can get me to delete for $200,000. It's just not happening. That's not no money to go sit down and face double life over. $200,000 that's not enough. Like what is that? That's a nice car. It's a nice car. And if you a hustler, you can do some things with it. But let's just keep it real. In this situation here, that was a nice chain or car for these guys. That was a spontaneous thought. That was almost like hitting a lick. A robbery. This is not what you do to your best friend. Somebody who named you, who mother named you got tatted on you. Somebody who you call your brother. Somebody you love. That's not what you do. You know, that's you know, ridiculous. So, hey, hopefully the guy beat the trial and he didn't do that. You know, and that's, hey, because allegations are just that, allegations. You know what I mean? You have to be innocent until proven guilty. And that's what we're here for, is to watch the trial and see how it unfolds. We can't say it's going to go this way. We can't say it's going to go that way. We don't know. We can't see into the future. And we don't know what other evidence the prosecution have, because they haven't laid all the cards on the table. And which is why the defense is going crazy with the evidence that is being presented. And wait, this and objection, because the prosecution coming with some heavy stuff here. But again, it's a double murder trial. This is a death penalty case. So what do you expect? It's going to be some heavy stuff. It's going to be some hard-hitting questions and witnesses being attacked by prosecution and prosecution witnesses being attacked by the defense. There's somebody fighting for their life here. Two guys fighting for their life here. This is not a game. This is not juvenile court. This is adult penitentiary, rest of your life for one, and the end of your life for the other, if they lose this trial. So, again, the trial resumes Tuesday. We can only tune in and see which way it's going to go. And, again, I pray the brother is innocent and did not murder his two best friends over $10. You know, because the guy is, at this point, worth at least $10, $15 million from going diamond. Okay, we're talking about millions of records being sold. 10 million records being sold, actually. And if we counting those records, 10 million records being sold through streams, oh my Jesus. Do you understand the level of money the label has just made off this guy? And if it's going because he's in jail, I'm sure the label hope he stayed there. Like, he didn't sell like that before this trial. I'm sure the label, they might stop funding this lawyer so he loses trial so he can keep making money. I wouldn't put my life in these people's hands. Or all my money. I would be getting my money, for one, from them and fund my own case and do everything myself, you know. So, it's a lot of money in the music industry. Don't think it's not. It's millions of these people not in it for nothing. People have houses and planes and yachts off of music. And off of other people's music at that. They're not the ones with the yachts, not the ones in the studio. The one with the plane, not the one dropping the music or doing nothing music related when it comes to the studio. They just handling business. And they know the business. So, yeah. But being worth that much money and saying you killed somebody over just some peanuts type of money is ridiculous. It's asinine almost. It's crazy. Again, hey, with that said, I want y'all to like, comment, subscribe, and get with me. I'm in Finn, I'm in Finn. You know, hey, I'm trying to deliver better commentated news for those who may not be too in tune to what's going on and need a more, better breakdown of what's happening. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because this is serious stuff right here. This not no joke at all, man. It's serious. Man is on trial for double murder, facing the death penalty, and even the things that's been going on in court actually has been ridiculous. Has been ridiculous with the antics and the viral moments and things like that of that nature. Which personally, I don't think none of that stuff should be occurring in the courtroom while you are fighting for your life. And that's just me. His attorney should advise against doing the antics in front of the jury because, you want to be a little bit more, down about just, the two friends being dead, period, and then you being the one accused of killing them. I mean, come on now. You want to show a little, something about that. So, let's see what the lawyer said for what's his best defense is.
Usually bras fit small-chested women like this.
Exactly. You guys, look at how much space that is. This is my life. Bra gaps.
Your Honor didn't see everybody else in the country saw Martha Clark walking out after one of the jurors was disqualified, giving another prosecutor a thumbs up sign. We have an affidavit here that Mr. Garden told Mr. Cochran, "We got your boy."
He helped defend and win an acquittal for O.J. Simpson in his double murder trial. You have obviously the experience of defending O.J. Simpson and many other people. But this case is interesting because it's taken more than 4 years to get to trial. And also, there isn't DNA evidence that we know of connecting Melly to the crime. They never found the firearm involved in the crime, in the murders.
Now, remember what I told y'all?
There are things that they
Didn't I
don't
say?
have, but there are things.
Didn't I say at the beginning of this video? I told y'all. I said this trial is as big as the O.J. Simpson trial. And now look at who they done brought on here to talk. The O.J. Simpsons, one of O.J. Simpson's attorneys. Who better to break down the trial than that guy? He helped O.J. Simpson beat a double murder trial. O.J. Simpson himself was on trial for double murder and beat the case. So if you're not guilty, you're not guilty. And evidence is a key factor in proving one's guilt or innocence in a court of law.
Across 595, going until they get to Miramar Parkway and 184th. At 184th, the red Mitsubishi goes south. And you will then see it at 3:50 a.m. going through the guard gate at Sunset Lakes. That was the gated community in which the individuals were all living at the time of this homicide in October of 2018. On the Sunset Lakes guard video, the red Mitsubishi goes through, the gray Jeep doesn't. The gray Jeep instead goes north and then proceeds to go to the actual scene of the homicides. The gray Jeep goes north on 184th up to Pines Boulevard. From Pines Boulevard, it travels west all the way to the edge of the Everglades, where it is desolate, where it is dark, where there are no witnesses.
Okay, so what do you think of what she just said there about how these cell phones track and how, they end up eventually at the scene of the homicides?
Well, this is clearly a 21st century case. Cases back in the day never had cell phone tracking. You would have eyewitnesses. Late in the last century, we developed DNA evidence, but the tracking evidence is dramatic and interesting. It almost never provides a full theory of guilt, but it often provides information that disputes theories of innocence. It's a circumstantial piece of evidence, but it's fairly substantial. What always is shocking to me is that people who are guilty or who do commit crimes take their cell phones with them. You would think people know enough about tracking and cell phones so that if they're going to do something and want to hide those facts from the authorities, they would leave their cell phones home. I was involved in a case like that recently, where this.
Now, with that said, that is so true, and nobody could tell you more about that than myself. I almost ended up in prison for the rest of my life for being involved with a situation that I should have not even have been involved with in the first place. And I was told on by a guy who was also involved with the situation. And the thing that came out in trial was that the guy said I was with him doing this, whatever was done, he said I was with him doing this thing, and it came out during the trial that my phone was pinging on the whole other side of town. So there's no way I could have been with you committing this alleged crime if I was on the whole other side of town. And because like this lawyer just said, people who commit crimes and do things usually have their phone with them. Well, I mean, your phone is your everything in this day and age. You gotta have your phone. You have your phone. You know, you just, do you even exist when you don't have a phone? I mean, so yeah. So what came out in my trial was that I was obviously on the other side of town due to my phone pinging from the other side of town and not being on the side of the town where this crime was committed at. So yeah, that cell phone evidence is very serious, and thanks to the Most High Christ, I'm able to sit here with you guys and make videos like this instead of sitting in a jail cell for the rest of my life, writing my beautiful wife how much I miss her and my daughter, who she was months pregnant with when I caught this case that had me facing the rest of my life in prison. And I thank God I beat that case, and I will never again be involved with any sort of street crime activity whatsoever. So I totally changed my life because of that situation. So, yeah.
The cell phone was not brought in, and the authorities had a problem with the tracking. So cell phone evidence is strong, circumstantial evidence, not of the crime itself, but of presence. And that's one of the elements that prosecutors always want to prove and have to prove in a case like this.
And again, in my situation, what the guy said about me, the guy who was quote unquote snitching on me, what he said was that I left my phone with my girl on the other side of town, and I went with him to go commit this crime while my girl had my phone. And it's like, that just sounds like the most ludicrous, unbelievable thing ever. Because what man in this day and age, and this happened way back in 2009, by the way, but what man in this day and age is leaving his phone with his girl, right? Like, who does that? But that's what he alleged I did. But at the end of the day, I beat my case based off of cell phone evidence and witness testimony of me being somewhere else and not being involved with this crime. But I'm here. I live to be able to tell that people will, someone will, to tell. I live through that to be able to tell you guys that you have to be careful in life with whatever you do, and be careful who you do those things with. And it's best to just get a job, a regular job, and live your life that way instead of being involved with any type of street crime or whatsoever. But the guy said that I left my phone with my girl, and we went up and did this and that, and so my phone was with my girl. That's why you don't see my phone. And it's like, that's stupid, because no man is leaving his phone with his girl. So yeah, I beat my case. Based off cell phone data.
Let's listen to what the defense attorney
The same
David
data that
Howard
usually
says
puts
about
people in
cell
prison
phone evidence
kept me
in
out
this
of
case
prison,
that the
thanks to the Most
state
High Christ.
contends
All
is so
glory to
damning.
God. All
They
glory
have
to the
no
Most
motive.
High Christ.
Their entire case is hinged upon technology of a phone they claim to have been in Mr. DeMon's possession. What they fail to tell you is that they come across evidence that Mr. DeMons got out of that car before this incident. They ignore that. It's not consistent with their features. What they fail to tell you is that phone comes back to the name of somebody other than Jamal DeMons. What they forgot to tell you is that their own witness will tell you that yes, that phone and Mr. Williams' phone and a number of other phones were all in the same account, and all of the people in the house used to use them interchangeably.
My name is Shannon Knight, and I am Little Knights Daycare
Carolina Sports Incorporated, A Paradise for Parents, Lamita Feed, current caretaker.
So he's calling into question whether or not Melly is the one who actually had that phone. Earlier in the state's opening statement, Professor Dershowitz, Christine Bradley said that you see Melly with the phone in his hand on surveillance footage and that he's playing with it before the homicides as they're leaving the recording studio. But the defense attorney is saying anybody could have had that. There are other people who could have had possession of that particular phone.
So what we see is a clash of circumstantial evidence on both sides. That is, the prosecution's evidence presents a kind of prima facie case that a cell phone that easily could be attributable to the possession of the defendant, and then the defense says, oh, wait a minute, that circumstantial evidence, let's give you some circumstantial evidence. There were other people who had access to that phone, and he left the car. So it's a battle of circumstantial evidence. Generally, defendants win battles of circumstantial evidence. Now, here there's more than the circumstantial evidence of the cell phone. But the cell phone evidence alone would not seem to satisfy beyond a reasonable doubt standard, not necessarily as a matter of law, but as a matter of the reality of jury deliberations. I can see a strong argument being made by the defense about reasonable doubt based on the two accounts regarding the cell phone.
Just 5 years after Purdue Pharma began distributing OxyContin,
as a defense attorney should, his defense is doing exactly what they should do. His defense are defending. You can tell he paid them good money. You know, he paid them good money, and he talked to them nice because they going to bat for him. I can tell you that much. His attorneys are going to bat for him, and that's for real. They not holding back at all.
it became the #1 painkillers.
Will be indicative of blood. This is not a stage personality. This is not an actor that's playing a character. This was his real life. Ladies and gentlemen, you will see that as soon as October 24th, 2 days before the homicide, Jamal Demmons is learning the oath of loyalty to the G-Shine blood set. You're going to see things in these messages that will be indicative of blood membership. For example, anytime a word would normally be spelled with a C.
So right here, you know, that was the start of the actual trial. And yeah, so we want to get to the defense attorney's opinion of OJ's ex-attorney, his opinion of how the case.
As in Charlie, they don't use that. They replace it with the letter B. So instead of saying
to the gang committing these homicides.
That sounds like a real stretch. That's not the kind of evidence that juries generally will say satisfies the standard of beyond reasonable doubt. You know, it raises suspicion.
As I said before,
association.
Based off evidence that's been presented so far, they don't have a conviction at all. At all. In my personal opinion. Again, I'm not an attorney, so anything I say should not be taken as legal advice in no way, shape, form, or fashion. By anyone else.
Very speculative now.
And once again, I advise anyone that can hear my voice not to be involved with any type of criminal activity. Because you will not win, you will not pass
the
go,
general
you will not
conclusion of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
And there is
I know
no
there's also a so-called admission
unless
or a
you are
statement
willing
that
to throw
may be
everybody else under the
suggestive
bus
of
for
some
what you did.
admission. Things like that often tie together the external circumstantial evidence. So in a case like this, that could be somewhat important, even though standing alone, it would be ambiguous. It's a combination of all the circumstances that could lead a jury to find a guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, but it could also lead a jury to say, look, yeah, it's very possible that this happened, but we're not satisfied that it's been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. That remains to be seen.
But if the prosecution is saying, look, he's a gang member, here's our evidence showing he's a member of this blood gang, how do you push back against that as a defense attorney? Or do you kind of just leave that out there and not not contest it too much because you're almost bringing more attention to it?
Well, if the evidence is overwhelming in gang membership, and the evidence that you put on about changing letters and stuff like that seems fairly compelling, they might ultimately introduce an expert on gangs. Don't know. That could be somewhat compelling, and it depends. I mean, the hardest job the defense attorney has is to assess the state's case and see what impact it's having on the jury, to determine whether to try to respond or ignore it. You do both at great risk. That's why being a defense attorney is such a subtle and difficult job. You can't do it by the books. You always have to see how the state's evidence seems to be resonating with the jury. Are they shaking their heads? Are they leaning forward? Are they accepting the argument that's being made? And if they are, you may have to respond. If they're not, you might be better off moving on to different issues where you have the strength and they have the weakness. That's what defense attorneys have to do if they're going to really be very good at it. And I don't have an ability to assess this particular defense attorney's savvy or ability, but I can tell you in general, those are very, very hard judgment calls, whether to respond to what may be weak evidence and strengthen it, or to ignore it, thereby saying to the jury, look, we don't even take this seriously. Hard question.
Let's look now at the prosecutor describing how Juvie and Sack Chaser, the fatal wounds, the wounds that actually took their lives, where they were fired from. And this is really important because literally in the hour or so, maybe even 40 minutes before the homicides are believed to have been committed, we have surveillance video from the recording studio showing all four men getting into the Jeep. And Melly is getting into the back driver's side seat. So he was sitting in that back seat. And they say that's very important because the shots, the fatal shots, were fired from the back seat. Take a listen.
The fatal wounds for Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams are coming from inside the vehicle, from the rear driver's side passenger going out towards the passenger side. The other interesting thing the medical examiner's office is going to tell you is that when the drive-by was staged at 4:02 a.m., the victims were already dead. The medical examiner will be able to testify and tell you that the fatal shots to Anthony Williams to his head, that enters in the back of his head and exits at the top, blowing out the front passenger window, was fatal. And that the additional wounds that are consistent with the trajectories going through the vehicle, he's already dead. There is a post-mortem inflicted gunshot wound.
Basically, Christine Bradley is saying those fatal shots were fired from the back seat of the vehicle. She's telling the jury, the medical examiner is going to say that they were not killed by these shots fired from outside the vehicle. So if your client is sitting in the back seat of the car, the location from which those fatal shots were fired, how do you contest that?
Well, that's very, very circumstantial. It's going to be very hard to prove to the satisfaction of the jury that the shots were actually fired from a particular location in a car. When you think about it, a person could shoot from the front part of the back seat, or the back part of the back seat, or the back part of the front seat. It's all going to be somewhat speculated. So I don't see the great strength in that particular item of evidence standing alone. In circumstantial cases like this kind, it's the combination. It's the aha fact. It's the fact that the jury sits and listens to one piece of circumstantial evidence and says, interesting. Second piece, that seems compelling. And when you get to the third piece, they do the aha, wow, yeah. Together, it seems very compelling. So it's the combination of factors. Standing alone, the evidence in the back seat doesn't seem to carry all that much weight.
Social media messages are also a big part of this case, according to the prosecution. And there's one message in particular that the prosecution says amounts to a confession.
One individual, and specifically, sends out, and I want to quote the message exactly that you will hear, and says, right after this, "Yo, homie, you good? Let me know something." And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is where context matters. What does that mean? If you work at Google and you say, "My whole floor is coded," that's a good thing. If you work at Broward General Hospital and you say, "My whole floor is coding," that is a bad thing. The context around the messages matters. So in the context of this message, this individual is reaching out, asking if Mr. Demmons is good, after he's been tagged in multiple social media posts about this drive-through, this shooting. And Mr. Demmons responds very succinctly, "I did that." Shh.
All right, Professor, how do you fight back against that?
Well, that's hard to fight against because that is almost a summary of the prior evidence. The prior evidence is all circumstantial. And here you have a statement, a direct statement. It's ambiguous, to be sure. And if the statement alone were introduced into evidence, it could be interpreted in multiple ways. And remember, too, that proof beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't require that each piece of evidence establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This wouldn't do that. It requires that the evidence all taken together proves beyond a reasonable doubt. And if I'm the prosecutor, I use that. It's not a confession by any means. It's a misnomer to call it a confession. Use that piece of evidence which may constitute something close to an admission, not a confession, something that could be interpreted as incriminating, and I would use that to tie together the other circumstantial evidence. And when you get evidence from the mouth, pen, or email of somebody themselves, it's far more compelling than evidence directed against them by other people. This really does put also a burden on the defendant to explain. And that's one thing as a defense attorney you never want, because that may incline the jury to say, gee, this is something he could explain. Let's hear from him. And if he doesn't take the stand, obviously, that can be, although the jury is instructed never to infer guilt from the failure to take the stand, that could, taken together with everything else, become an important piece of evidence.
I feel as well that the defense has to explain that. And I don't know how they explain it unless they call an expert in something to talk about social media, and maybe he's just, maybe this is all bluster, maybe he's joking. I have no clue. So how do you explain that if you don't want your client taking the stand?
Very difficult. I would not put an expert on. If you put an expert on, it just highlights the fact, what do you need an expert? Why don't you put the defendant on the stand to explain? What do you need a third party to explain? So I would not put an expert on. I would either, if you could, and the facts, I don't know enough about the facts to know whether there's any possibility of putting a defendant on the stand, but if not, I think then the burden falls to the defense lawyer to try to offer an explanation, which you're entitled to do in closing argument. And so, but it's risky. It's risky. There's no perfect way of responding to a piece of evidence like that. There's an old stuffed fish experience when people have a stuffed fish on their mantle, and the plaque says, "I'd still be swimming if I had only kept my mouth shut." And I'm sure the defense attorney is saying that right now. If only he hadn't written that on social media. If he hadn't said that, in that case, it's not your mouth shut. It's your, obviously, social media. But that is damning. It's not by itself conclusive, and that's why it's not a confession. But taken together with other circumstantial evidence, it could help put context, as the prosecutor said, put context on the other evidence.
In this next clip, the defense talks about how they think this investigation was a mess. And this is really right up your alley because you guys claimed this in the O.J. Simpson case as well. So let's take a listen.
3 years after arresting this young man and sticking him in a cell, the state looks at its case and says, oh man, this looks a little incompetent. Miramar police seems to have botched this investigation, and they call the Broward Sheriff's Office and ask them to come and look at the investigation upon which this entire prosecution rests. And he looks at it, and he says he instantly knew he had to start from scratch. I think his words were, it was the worst thing I had seen in my life.
If all of that is accurate, that the Broward Sheriff reviews this case at the request of the state attorney's office, and the sheriff is saying, this investigation is a mess. I've never seen anything this bad. If that is indeed the case, wow. I mean, aren't you as a defense attorney going to put the Broward County Sheriff up there and say, tell us what you meant by that?
Well, or not, or just argue to the jury that what you think he meant by it, because you don't put somebody on unless you know what he's going to testify to. We don't know what he's going to testify to. You know, arguments about messy prosecution can cut both ways. It can create sympathy in the jury's mind, saying, you know, these guys aren't particularly good, but look what they came up with. They have that statement on the social media. They have the material about the cell phones. You know, they didn't do a very good job, but the evidence seems to point in the direction of guilt. So it's often an argument that cuts both ways. I've done, I think, now about 35 homicide cases, either murder, attempted murder, and one vast majority of them. And mostly you win those cases, not based on the sloppiness of the investigation, because that's something that the jury can be sympathetic to. But you have to focus the jury very, very hard on alternate explanations of the evidence. Although the burden's on the government, when you have a substantial amount of evidence, the burden really shifts in the minds of the juries to the defense. So the defense has to present plausible alternative theories that allow the jury to give meat to the bones of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't know enough about this case to know whether the defense attorney can do that. But I think just talking about how messy the investigation was is not going to resonate that well with the jury in light of the evidence that they did come up with.
And we've seen plenty of cases over the years where there were a lot of mistakes in criminal investigations, a lot of missteps, missed opportunities, messy police work, and the state was still able to obtain a conviction. We've seen that many times.
Yeah. No, there's no question about that. And in fact, it's interesting because juries tend to be sympathetic to prosecutors, and they know how hard the job is. They know that the criminal defendants do everything in their power to try to muddy the waters, and often juries are prepared to see through investigative blunders. I've had the same experience seeing cases that were extremely sloppy.
Hey, so like he said, I guess it could go either way. It could go in the defense favor, or it could go in the prosecution's favor. Right now, the prosecutors are basically everything presented circumstantial, but they have also presented some damning evidence as well that the defense had a hard time explaining away and trying to get around, but they did object to it. And I think some of that evidence was actually threw out, and then the jury was told to ignore certain things said. So, yeah, this is a deep trial. So again, like, comment, subscribe. I'm FN, String, I'm FN. Yeah.